Pokemon Xenoverse is one of the most highly rated fan games out there, and there's a few reasons for that. It has a great mix of Fakemon, which some people usually don't like to use, but they are genuinely some of the best that I've ever seen. A new graphic style with a story that is short and sweet, but also a gimmick that brings alternate forms to life as boss Pokemon, and it's honestly so good that it has its own trailer at the start of the game. I mean, there's so much more to talk about, but let's have a look at them as we play through the main story. To start things off, you can choose between classic and modern mode, which is basically how the XP share works. One minute I'm seeing this awesome action-packed scene, and the next thing I know is that I'm getting shot straight out of my mom. And the most horrific part is that I have a dad. This ain't a Pokemon game. A few years down the line, me and my dad just went out for a walk, and then suddenly we hear an explosion. As we run up to it, we find 3 Pokeballs holding the 3 starters of this region. Seeing this opportunity, he allows me to choose one as my partner, and I mean, it's not suspicious at all, but I could choose between Shalion, a Grass Fairy type, Shulong, a Water Dragon type, but the one I went for was Trishout, a Fire Sound type. Yeah, you're not hearing things, cause a brand new type has been introduced in this game, and it's kind of always been a half type since we already have moves like Hyper Voice and Boom Burst. But right after we chose our starter Pokemon, a man with a Tyranitar shows up and obliterates my dad, who ended up disappearing after the attack, so I guess we're back to having a normal Pokemon game. After 10 long years, we finally got permission from my mom to go in search of my dad, and this was the point that our journey began. Within the first route itself, we encountered Sparkowl, which is leagues above GameFreak's Kilowattrel. Okay, let's be real. It's not hard to one-up what is clearly just a bird. As we make it over to the next town, it's already up in flames. If only they told me sooner, I could have bought some marshmallows and we could have made this whole thing a party. But then a dude named Aster shows up and casually throws out a Suicune, which puts out the fire. And as he's walking away, he realizes that I'm the son of his previous mentor. Aster always looked up to my dad, so he asked me to come along with him to the beach to find the Pokemon responsible for setting the town on fire. There are these mysterious X-Pokemon that come from another world called the Xenoverse and have been causing trouble in different parts of the region. Well, the first boss was an Elekid, which was just a bomb, so no, not a big deal, right? But the thing about these bosses is that they have multiple health bars, so they actually pose a challenge. The Elekid was a fire type, which wasn't the best for me since I already had a fire starter, but once we showed Aster that we had the potential of a true Pokemon trainer, he recommended I attempt the gym challenge. The gym in town specializes in grass types, and I know what you're thinking. Dude, you got a fire type, no wonder you beat it so easily. Well, yeah, but when you go into battle, you don't expect to be facing a freakish, leaf-storming Spiritomb. So the next thing we do is head to the lab, and that's where we'll get to learn a bit more about the sound type. It's super effective against water, flying, and fairy, while it itself is weak to dragon and electric. So it kind of balances things out well, but in the end, the poison type still takes the L. The cool thing about the grass gym was that you can actually find some Pokemon too, so I ended up catching a Phantom. I mean, a ghost type this early in the game is pretty rare, so I wasn't passing up on that, and on top of it, they may be holding drives that let them evolve. So long explanation short, we got Trevenant. So now my journey took me onto a ship, which I didn't really know where it was going, but it was kind of like the SSN, you know, you walk in on a few people, you go searching through their trash, you force the chefs to give you some food, but what ends up in your hand is octopus risotto, so I'm gonna leave that in the trash for someone else to pick up. And of course, the poor captain that has a tummy ache. Thankfully, this time around, a horde of Sharpedo are circling the ship as we speak. And before we know it, the whole ship comes crashing down. I mean, that was basically the best outcome, because I did not want to give that man the rubdown that he was looking for. Although now I was stuck in this place called Darkhole Island, and as the name suggests, it had a pretty creepy, ghostly vibe to it. But as you explore the island, you eventually find an injured Lapras on the beach, and the best part is that you can heal it up with a potion, and then it takes you back to the abandoned ship. See, now I don't know where everybody went, but the one thing that I wanted to see was right in front of me. An ex-Sharpedo was leading the pack, and the battle was on, because I wanted to catch that thing. It looked super ominous, and I mean, just the concept of a Pokemon from another world is very appealing. As I exit the room, we meet a man named Taraxo and his Alakazam, who had apparently teleported all the people off the ship using his psychic powers, which begs the question as to why he didn't take me with him in the first place. But whatever. He takes us to Polaris Town, which has an icy cave, and I found 2 new Pokemon in there. Reindeer being a cute elf-like creature, and Blingrim, a mischievous toxic spinner. But my favorite had to be this kid's Hikulu, which was just way too adorable. From there, we go all the way to Neutron Town, which had the second gym. But on the way there, we pick up this mysterious earring that some weird robot-looking person drops. I had no idea what was going on, but when I entered the next town, I met up with this girl who became one of my rivals, and together we beat up the evil team called Team Dimension, who had just hijacked the city. So then I went to the library to confront the admins, and what do you know? Seems like somebody called the Power Rangers. While I was skipping the dialogue, the gym leader of the town showed up, so we tag teamed them in the battle together, which was as one-sided as it could ever be, because the game forces you to lose here, and it's quite obvious when Hawlucha's fighting type move doesn't even leave a scratch on something that is 4 times weak to it. And all of a sudden there was this red light that shined through the room, and it was coming from the earring that we had just picked up along the way. It absorbed the energy from the terrestrial plate that was in the library, and it resonated with our starter Pokemon, so giving it the item allowed it to transform to its next stage. All this led up to the climactic battle where we put our new form to the test, but my partner's Hawlucha ended up doing all the damage, so it was kinda pointless. Team Dimension fled the scene, so I made my way over to the second gym and took on Ginger, who was a fighting type gym leader. He started off with a Passimian, which got knocked out after using Fire Fang a couple of times, but then it said that he was sending in Pyukumuku, so naturally I'm gonna throw out Trevenant, a grass type, right? But my mind was comprehending as to what was in front of me. And then it pulled out those guns, and there was no way I was letting that thing set up attack boost on me, so a Will-O-Wisp and a Hex combo was enough to one-shot it, which only left his signature Hawlucha. Unfortunately for him, my Sparkowl had just evolved, and it was basically the perfect counter to it. So after obtaining the second gym badge, we got the TM for Power Up Punch, which is really good in the early game. On the way to the next gym, I caught this weird sumo punching bag, bug type looking thing, and then stopped by a cozy little town where I got a fishing rod. It had this whole new minigame vibe to it that was really cool change, where you kind of like dodge obstacles, and as we leave the town we are confronted by this guy who looks like a cyborg, half human, half robot, and he tries to take us down in battle with his partner Pokemon, Sabolt, which is super effective against me as it's an electric type. After my man loses, we have to get through String Forest, which sounds so pleasant, but what I found at the end of it was horrifying. An ex-Galvantula had made a mess of those kids, and it was up to me to save them. I didn't really care about that because I was just so focused on trying to catch this Ice-type Galvantula, but on the very last turn, I got a critical hit, so that just made this whole situation a bummer. Yay, I saved some kids. Who frickin' cares? Just outside of the next city, I caught Chigami, which honestly just sounds like a slur in some language, and I'm just so afraid of saying it. It's a fairy type, and it looked pretty interesting, so I added it to the squad and went on to fight the third gym leader, who also happens to specialize in fairies. This is where my star Pokemon really shines, cause not only do I resist them thanks to the fire type, but I'm also super effective using sound moves. Besides that, the gym leader also used an X-Smeargle that transformed itself into a pastry chef, and honestly I don't want to be eating anything that comes out of that tail. But basically that was it from the third gym. The next step was getting through Gravity Tunnel, which was this massive labyrinth with multiple exits, so it was kinda confusing. I saw some cool Pokemon as well, from Excalibolt to Pepequeno, which was this chilly Pokemon that looked 100 times better than the ugly piece of crap that GameFreak came up with. Like literally, I can't be bothered to remember its name. The next city was called Ishtar, basically an oasis, But as you enter, you see local people with these plain white eyes, and it's pretty disturbing. Apparently the whole town had been put under a hypnosis, and the only person who was sane was a soldier who had just returned from out of town. So together we both go to investigate the situation, and we find an ex-Gengar who seems to be the one responsible. It commanded all the people to bring it food, and in the process it also trapped the gym leader inside her gym, which was the pyramid, right? So it then commanded the 2 guards to take us down, but when that doesn't work, the Gengar takes it upon himself. And this is one of the hardest X-Pokemon in the game to defeat, cause it's a typing that you would never guess. Psychic and Dragon. It one-shot both Weavile and Shockbird, but Trevenant came in to save the day. Gengar missed its hypnosis, which let me get a lead seat up and slowly chip it down. But after that, the AI was kinda stupid, cause it kept using hypnosis when I was already asleep instead of attacking me with Psychic, and when it did, it used Sucker Punch instead. So I used a Will-O-Wisp and Hex combo to finish it off once again, and the sad thing was that I wasn't even allowed to catch it, cause I think it plays a role in the story. Eventually, Gengar left the scene, and out came... oh my god. Nefar, the queen of Ishtar City and also the water-type gym leader. She then tells us that there's this different X-Pokemon east of the city which is making life tough for them, and then she goes on to tell me that I'm not strong enough to beat it.
Are you trying to hurt my feelings? Because if so, you are succeeding.
She asked me to go see her grandpa, who's the cardinal of the region, so you know what, I'll come back for you when I'm stronger. So we went back through Gravity Tunnel, and this time I got to pick up a new fossil Pokemon. I had the choice between solidified ink that came from outer space, or a handprint of the ancient past, so I was obviously gonna choose the space rock, right? On the next route, I found Manticore, which was pretty sweet looking, but I decided to catch Dusmy instead, which was this game's Dratini. It would eventually evolve into a pseudo-legendary, but it's gonna be a while before that happens. On top of Mount Starburst was where I was gonna find Nefar's granddad, so I made my way up there, clearing a few lava puzzles and stuff, and when we eventually meet him, his partner Pokemon is Scaleon, which clearly had to be a Dragon-type evolution, right? He is one of the 4 cardinals of this region, which I guess are basically the Elite Four, but also protectors of the Xenogates, which are areas that have a huge connection to the X dimension, and one of them is here on Mount Starburst. He makes the connection that I'm Versal's son, and he tells us about how my father was a scientific genius, along with his friend named Victor. The 2 of them together had discovered the X dimension, but their ideals diverged. My father wanted them to be treated as normal Pokemon, but meanwhile, Victor saw them as a threat and wanted to seal them away for eternity. With that ideology in mind, Victor formed a group called Team Dimension, and he was probably the one who made my dad disappear. So now the Cardinal asks me to follow him towards the Xenogate, where he starts to tell us an ancient legend. There was once this really powerful Pokemon named Vacuum. It split up into 2 halves. The evil Pokemon named Dragolisk was banished to the Xenoverse along with the X-Pokemon, and it hopes to break free one day and take its revenge on Luxflon, the embodiment of light. So now, me and my star Pokemon are bound to protect this world, and in order to get stronger, we make our way through the Xenogate to get the energy required to make our starter reach its final form. We didn't know what dangers lied inside, but what confronted me was myself. The darker half who has been resenting me and wants to take control. He had his own version of a Trishout that was very demonous looking, but after defeating him, we got the Xenoversal ring and made our way out of the gate before it became too unstable. So now I was able to change my star Pokemon's form, but the energy from the ring was overwhelming and it turned into a savage beast that was not listening to my command. In order for me to get control of it, the Cardinal lends me his Scaleon to take it down because it was just way too powerful. My newly evolved Harrow was able to hit it with a super effective spark, but then it got taken down. So in this situation, Scaleon was actually a perfect counter. So thanks to that, I was able to get it back to its senses. So now with our side mission done, we could head back to Ishtar City using the HM service of Scaleon to fly us back. The 4 gyms specialized in water types, so I dominated all the trainers inside with the help of my Trevenant, and while getting through this pyramid puzzle, my Punch Bug evolved into Hercules. So while I was checking its stats, I realized that Trishout had the ability Huge Power, which I was not expecting at all. So I went back to the Pokemon Center and retaught them moves like Mega Horn, but when I taught Paper Cut to my origami thing, it allowed it to evolve, so now we got Grudako, a sharply crafted crane which added the Steel type, so it was pretty unique. I then made my way through the chambers of the gym and challenged myself to stand strong against Nafar, cause my god, I can't keep my head straight. As a contrast to herself, she sent out the ugliest Pokemon in the world, which Trevenant dealt with using Horn Leech, so I recovered all the damage I took back. Then Hanshen was the next Pokemon, which is a complete twist as it's a dragon flying type, although you can fish it up in oceans, so it was pretty fitting. It killed my fairy type, so I sent in her Hercules thinking that just like Gyarados, it wouldn't get any flying type moves, but that was not the case. Things were looking bad, cause it got a Moxie boost and even my Harrock couldn't finish it off. So I put all my hopes in Trish out, which cleaned up Hanshin, tore down Milotic with a couple of super effective sound moves, and finally her signature Pokemon, X-Cofagrigus. Hyper Voice one-shotted, but I was actually intrigued by it, so I was looking forward to catching one myself, but the more important matter was that we defeated Nafar and obtained the 4 gym badge as well as the TM for Scald. I'm gonna miss the city. Oh, who am I kidding? You all know it's Nafar. The next place we had to go through was this canyon, and just about when you get there, you find this lonely, frightened white Ponyta, and as you approach it, a Rapidash suddenly jumps in to protect its little baby. The drawing was amazing and it clearly showed it as a cloudy Pegasus, so it had to be a flying type. I mean, with that in mind, it wasn't hard to beat, but they ended up disappearing after a few awkward interactions. At this point, I really wanted to switch things up on my team, so I caught Pekabone, this ground dark type chicken wing, and all it needed to evolve was a Dust Stone, and it was pretty cool with that skull vibe. After that, I went back around near this weird glitchy area that had a strong connection with the Xenoverse. You can find X Pokemon here, and eventually got my hands on the Exia mask that I was so looking forward to use. It was a water rock type, and it was a 1% encounter, so you better believe I was kicking something off the team for it. Deep inside the canyon, we run into Team Dimension, and one of their higher-ups starts to harass Rapidash, and if it didn't cooperate, they would hurt its baby. So we try to step in, but the goth chick blackmails Rapidash into fighting me, and well, yeah, you've got to be kidding me. This thing was so powerful. I mean, it had one of the best type combinations being a flying and electric type, and was so offensive. Discharge, Hurricane, In the Rain that too, which never misses, and Weather Ball to beat ground type so it became a water type move. To be fair, I had 2 baby Pokemon on my team, but there was still no stopping this thing. It ended up surviving on 1 health, but man, I had to use quite a few revives to beat it. We spoiled Team Dimension's plans, so they ran away.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
But a few minutes later, we catch up to them, only this time we find admins A and B backing them up, as well as Trey, although he didn't seem to be fond of Team Dimension, so we teamed up together to take them down. His Sawbolt had evolved and now had this cloak kind of thing, but what I didn't realize is that it was a special Pokemon too, and you can only find one of them in the entire game. So he also had a starter of sorts that makes use of the rings that we have to change form, so that was really cool. As we were about to leave, Ponyta and Rapidash appear once again. Trey was impressed that I managed to prevent their captures, so he recognized me as a worthy trainer. The Ponyta took a liking to me, so it joined my team, which was pretty cute. Meanwhile, Rapidash ended up joining Trey's team to take revenge on Team Dimension, so that was kinda rad. And with all this going on, you start to get closer to Trey, and it feels like you're actually a genuine rival to him. The next city was Westar, which had a countryside theme to it, but it was very gloomy. Even Nurse Joy looked hella depressed. There was this whole Ghostbusters type of mission where you explore a haunted mansion with a squad and creepy things keep happening inside. It took some time, but in the end we took down this hideous 4-handed Pokemon called Hangid, which was the cause of the problems. After that, I could access the gym in town, which specializes in ghost types. As I approached the leader who was in the first room itself, I got teleported to this prison area and it was all a puzzle. I had to learn about all the inmates and memorize their past to get through the roadblocks in my way, and after opening the final door, the prisoners made an escape, so now it was my job to go find them around town and defeat them. I mean, this was a pretty fun and clever gym, but the gym battle was a lot easier for me. He did have this cool sheriff-like cacturn, but it got one-shot by Trishout, and the rest was taken care of by Rexquium. As we left town, we noticed that Team Dimension was hijacking a train at the station, so we headed on over and freed the conductor from their grasp. But we couldn't just let them get away with it, so we hopped on board. We had to sneak around through the compartments, battling our way through the Dimension members, and had to witness something disgusting. Right before we reached the front of the train, we were joined alongside Aster and Alice to confront the man in charge, and it was none other than Victor, the leader of Team Dimension. As soon as he mentions my father's name, Trishout comes out of its Pokeball, and Victor replies by sending out a Tyranitar, the very one that had taken out my father. The two of us fell into a fit of rage, and we were overtaken by our darker sides. After a bit of an explosion, Victor went missing, so we chased after him on the top of the train, but when it came to it, his Tyranitar transformed into this monstrous creature, and it launched off an attack, and the next thing I knew was that I was on the floor. That cutscene didn't really have much relevance, but now we were thrown onto a whole new path which leads towards the next gym in Hyperion City. While training on the route, my weak little Dusmy evolved into Ego Hiss at level 45. The Pokemon was pretty much a Hydreigon situation where it evolves again at an absurd level. Once we reached Hyperion, a tour guide took us around the city, so I made the most of my time by exploring, getting a TM, as well as choice specs from the clothing store, which is really good. The next day, a music festival was supposed to take place, but it shortly got interrupted when a gigantic Slurpuff showed itself behind the gym. So we went back to the terrace and took it on, but this X-Pokemon was ridiculous. A poison-type Slurpuff with moves like Earthquake and Drain Punch made it fairly difficult to beat. And you know, I thought I would try and catch it considering all the hard work I put in to beat it, but the game hard rejected me, so that wasn't even the worst part because after I defeated it, the stupid gym leader ended up catching it instead. Like, why? The next thing I did was make my way through the gym, which was a concert hall, so I had to push people out of my way. The gym specialized in the sound type, so it was cool seeing which all old Pokemon have been turned into it. The leader used Pokemon like Arbok, Pyroar, Noivern, and even the X-Slurpuff that was meant to be mine. But his signature was this motorbike, which also happens to be a bug type, which is an incredible concept. So with 6 gyms down, I only had to collect 2 more badges. This part of the map was kind of a dead end, so the only way out was by going to an airport and flying on out of there. I bought a few TMs like Psyshock and Fault Swipe from their store, and then moved on towards Route 9, which was this jungle-esque area, and along the way we met this Tarzan-like kid who helped us get to Dorado Village, which is this tribal area. And while exploring the place, we learned that the Jungle Boy is actually the son of a cardinal. So we traveled together to meet his dad, who is at Hylian Temple, which is yet another landmark filled with puzzles on every floor. But when we reached the bottom, we once again encountered Victor. This temple is the second of the 4 Xenogates, and so he had opened up the gate so that one of his own members could go inside and get the energy that allowed my Trishout to evolve into its stronger form, just like when I did it back at the volcano. His ex-Roserade had put the Cardinal under his command, and it was our job to take it down. Again, this thing looked sick, but I had no idea what type it was. It was too late though, because he had just bought enough time for his member to come out of the Xenogate, and it was none other than Trey himself. With his newfound power in Sabolt, which looked insane by the way, he decimated my Trishout without hesitation, and they both left the scene. We then met up with the Cardinal, who explained the situation regarding the Xenogates and how I am the chosen one who had to take on the responsibility of defeating them. I then made my way to the next city, but along that route, I was shocked to see a trainer with a shiny Marowak. Like, I don't know if this man normally has it or whether he just took my shiny chance. But anyways, I reached Vegas City, which was massive by the way. It had everything from a casino, the beach, a shopping mall which sold all kinds of items, as well as a circus, which is also the gym. I had to take on 3 different trainers who made use of flying, fighting, and fire-type Pokemon before I could even face the gym leader, who was looking a bit dominating, to say the least. She specialized in fire types using stuff like Incineroar, Kung Fu Pandamon, Honey Bear thing, and the thing I was least expecting was an X-Toxapex, which is literally the shape of a circus. Again, that's just a really cool design, and like, how do people come up with these ideas, dude? After defeating her, we met up with the gym leader's father, who saw great potential in me. The thing is that there was another gym leader in Vegas City, but he had vanished a long time ago and the building was demolished. The father knew where the 8th gym leader was, and since no replacement was asked for, he was the final badge I needed, so he told us that the leader had retired in another region far away. So he gave us an airplane ticket, so I flew right on over, and what do you know, we ended up in Vermilion City from Kanto. This was a shock to me. The last thing I was expecting was to go back to an old region and face off none other than Lieutenant Surge. His fire and hunger for battling had run out, and so he came back to the abandoned gym of Vermilion, although he was way older this time around, as well as changing up his team to suit the steel type. Even though he used new mons like Blingrudge, he still had shades of yellow in Magnezone, as well as Raichu, which was now this robotic surfer. Since we defeated him, he gives us the 8th and final gym badge, but then also goes on to talk about his past. Having been a member of Team Rocket long ago, he had nowhere to go when Giovanni disbanded them. Having always been a soldier on the battlefield, he went to another region to fight their battles. But war never changes. It's always a harsh world, and during a fight, he was cornered by ground-type Pokemon. He managed to escape, only losing an arm, but his Raichu was unrecognizable. He ended up blacking out, but when he woke up, he was found rescued in the hands of Team Dimension. When he didn't want anything to do with them, he ran away with his partner Raichu. Only this time, it was roughed up so bad that they had to run experiments on it and made it a cyborg as well. From that point on, he went back to his abandoned gym in Vermilion and lived out his days in hiding. He knew exactly where the Team Dimension hideout was, and since that was the final clue needed for me to find my dad, he told us that they are located in Eldu's Casino, somewhere underground in the sewers. Everything else was up to me, and so I dashed back to Vegas City and started clobbering my way through all the trainers that were in my way. In the sewer, I also ran into this Pokemon called Kimooz, and it transformed into this gigantic pile of sewage. It was kinda like Wishy-Washy's schooling form, which was pretty cool. We found the Dimension hideout, but the only person waiting in there for me was Trey and his Sobold. But this time it was his alter version. All his demons and rage coming at me in battle, but obviously me being the idiot that I am, forgot to heal my Pokemon in a full-on 6v6 battle, so this was way more challenging than it had to be. Rexqueam survived the Sludge Wave and Revenge killed the Kimooz. Fawtail was a fairy type, so the safest thing for me was for my Pokemon to go down, so that I could cleanly bring in Trish out to Boomburst it. He sent in his own Rexqueam, so I used my Cofagrigus, which had just enough defense to survive with super effective Earthquake and retaliate with Scald. Trishout also one-shot both Pegasus Rapidash and Scizor, so that left only Sobold. I sent in my Fighting Beetle, which got intimidated by Sobold, but that didn't matter as I clicked Storm Throw, which always results in a critical hit, which if you didn't know, doesn't care about stat changes. With that, Trey was done for, and to make things even better, my Egohiss evolved into its final form being Egorgion, now a Dragon Electric type with amazing stats. Trey was consumed by rage, but he had now learned his lesson. He realized that he was nothing but a pawn in Team Dimension's hands, so he now joined the fight alongside me. What I didn't realize was that behind him was a rocket ship, so we all got on board, and it turns out that it was headed for the moon. The Xenoverse exists in a certain plane, or whatever nonsense, and Victor wants to destroy it from the inside. Pretty much, we all split up and start taking down all the dimension guards in the way. At one point, me and Trey came across this tank, and from within it comes out Sergeant S, the fusion of the admins A and B. Trey's biggest goal was to take down A and B himself as a form of revenge, so he asked us to leave this to him. But with his new power, the Sergeant immobilizes Trey since he's a cyborg, and with him not able to move, it was up to me. I mean, things were going pretty smoothly, and I took down 3 of his Pokemon, but then suddenly... So you're telling me that these two fused their normal and shiny Bisharp to create an actual frickin' Power Ranger? You have got to be kidding me. After getting through a bit more of the base, we had to try and take down a barrier, and for that to happen, we ended up sending our Trish out into a vent to do a cool little puzzle and avoid being seen. Eventually, we enter the final room and confront Victor himself. Well, Aster was going to battle him, but Victor activated the power of his staff, which prevented a single user from opening their Pokeballs. So this was one way of the game to keep you as the hero in this situation and take him on. So for starters, he led with a Focus Sash Kricketune, so my Gorgeon took it out in 2 hits after he potioned up. Then came the monstrous bug-like Tyranitar. I mean, I wasn't prepared for it, so I just clicked Mega Horn, got a critical hit, and it went down, so things were looking good for me. Like, I don't really know if that was meant to be his ace, cause it literally didn't do anything. Her Hercules was so tanky, it easily endured the Psycho Cut and countered it with a Mega Horn. I do kinda have to say that I am a bit over-leveled at this point, to say the least, so maybe that was my own fault. Finally, he had an Egorgeon himself. Mine did some damage, but then my dude pulled out the Draco Meteor and absolutely clapped my cheeks. But yeah, that was pretty much the end of Victor. He planned so much for Aster, but this 10-year-old kid was the one who gave him the final punch. Aster demanded that he show us where our father is, and he was happy to oblige, which is kinda weird. As we walked into the room, there was my father just waiting with a smile on his face. And as soon as I saw that, I knew everything we were led to believe was a lie. This man was never kidnapped. He was the true commander of Team Dimension. He staged his disappearance from the very start and left us with a star Pokemon so that he can build Team Dimension in hiding. But before we can judge him, there are always 2 sides to the story, right? So my father says that Versal is not actually his real name, but rather Silver from Johto. He was the son of Giovanni, who ran one of the biggest evil organizations, and in order to not be associated with him, he changed his name and moved to the Eldio region with my mother. At some point, Giovanni managed to enter the Xenoverse, but that led to his downfall as he was torn apart by a Pokemon which was none other than Draglisk. In fear of what Draglisk may do to the rest of his family, he started to build Team Dimension in order to put a stop to it. I was the final piece needed for him to open up the Xenoverse, and after hearing all his crap, the rage consumed me and I was taken over by my alter form. I started fighting him to shut his mouth and it went alright, but then he pulled out a mega frickin' Weavile that had like an ice mask, which was pretty cool, but it got one shot anyways, so yeah. He obviously had Feraligatr, which was the star Pokemon that he stole from Johto, and apart from that, he also sent out an Entei. I mean, that was pretty nuts, but thankfully I had the perfect counters, so everything went swimmingly. Even though we beat him, he didn't come unprepared, because in order to fight Draglisk, he needed a monster of his own, and then he calls upon Mewtwo. My father jumped into the portal, leaving Mewtwo to deal with us. I mean, this thing didn't only look insane, but it was a super boss fight. It had 4 health bars, and its ability was Protean. I managed to paralyze it, and from there, Rexqueen was able to tank a few hits. And once I saw that it turned into a fire type, that was my chance to strike it down. Mewtwo fled the scene, and with everyone here, we decided to give chase to my father. So we jumped into the portal, which led us into this barren wasteland. While running through the grass here, I found all the X-Pokemon that I've seen on my journey, so I probably should have caught some, but I just ran straight to the final showdown. My dad confronted the monster of this world, and just as it was about to launch an attack, a light suddenly appeared and was none other than Luxflon, its other half. It protected us and even weakened Draglisk, but my dad's plan was bound to fail and he was distraught. Draglisk took this chance to take over my father and he was now a demon. I mean, I'm just assuming what's happening here, but if Draglisk is in fact inside my dad, then shouldn't I be attacking my dad? I mean, that would have been so much more fun. I don't really know what's happening, but there was a flash and then boom, somehow they both are kind of merged in this weird galactic bubble kind of thing, and we're all freaking out. Meanwhile, Gengar's just yelling us to shoot that thing down or it's over for all of us. So the four of us launch our best attacks at it, and that doesn't really help at all. So the spirit of Fluxflon starts communicating with us and says that the only way to bring it down is to create harmony between light and darkness within the Chosen One. And I'm like, what a load of crap, it's gonna kill me. But at the very last moment, my alter and I confront each other one final time. He says that it's been a lot of fun being a part of me and coming out whenever I got raged, and so with that newfound respect between me and my alter, Trishout begins to change forms into the fiery lizard chicken wing of doom. That's right, with the new move Starburst and an ability voice tuning, ain't nothing stopping me now, and it was truly the ultimate showdown. This battle took everything I had. I had to chip it down slowly with every single Pokemon I had, so slowly that they all went down, and the only thing I could rely on was my trusty partner. Even after being over leveled, it was really intense, and I had to use quite a few potions near the end there. After stopping that mess, Luxflon opened up a portal back to Earth with its last bit of energy, and with Dragless going berserk, we all had to get out of there. While some of our friends escape, Trey stands his ground against Dragolisk and reveals that he is a human bomb manufactured by my father. This was his destiny. He wanted to go out with a bang, and even when my father tries to make amends, Trey denies the help and says that the only bond that he shares is with Sobold and nothing will change his mind. He tries to buy us some time to get out of there. After all, he admits that even though he wasn't fond of me, I helped him understand the value of friendship, teamwork, and most of all, my honesty made him feel more human than ever. I wasn't gonna let that bond go to waste, so I suggested that we take on Dragolisk in a double battle. Trey accepts, but he always knew I was naive. At the very last moment he says thanks, but you have to survive. He pushed me into the portal, and I never saw him again. Trey sacrificed himself for the good of the world, and I just went about my business like nothing happened. I got this cutscene saying it was 3 months later and that my Trishout had a cool new power transformation, but again, me being the idiot that I am, I didn't notice it, so I ended up playing the rest of the game with the weaker form of my starters. So we then got a letter from the 4 cardinals of the region that was basically an invitation to challenge them to become the champion of the region. So I quickly made my way over there with my new trusty Lapras that I'd saved before, and after getting through the rough and long victory road, it was time for the finale. Now, I don't really want to go into the battles too much, but I will have to say that some of it was really surprising. Cardinal Chua started off with his psychic types, and the second Pokemon he sent in was a Tapu Fini, which looked like a Tapu Lele. And I mean, I was just tripping all over the place, and I'm just as confused as you guys are right now. And then there was this wrinkled Persian that was looking into the future of its own death, but nonetheless. The other Cardinals also made use of these X-Tapus, which instead of being part Fairy, were actually all Dark types. So there was a Dark Ice type Tapu Lele, a Flying Dark type Tapu Koko, and a Dark Dragon type Tapu Bula, which was insane. When we rose to the top of Mount Zodiac, the champion was waiting for me, the last step in my journey, and was none other than Aster himself. They never mentioned it through the story, but the champion was always by our side, fighting Team Dimension and protecting us every step of the way. Now, weirdly enough, I kinda just wrecked his team with a single Pokemon. Gorgeon just had all the moves to pretty much one-shot his whole team. I completely forgot that this man had a Suicune, and he ever so casually Mega Evolved it only for it to be one-tapped. With that done and dusted, we had completed the main story of Pokemon Xenoverse. But if you happen to love this game, fear not, because there are 5 different DLCs that expand on the game, and these look intense. Like, what is even going on in that 3rd one? If you want me to cover the DLC as well, make sure to smash that like button, and that's about it. I'll see you guys next time.